Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. Whether you're listening to the podcast or watching the YouTube video, stay tuned for some awesome information. Good afternoon, guys. Thank you for joining Drive Chats today. If you're catching this live or the YouTube or podcast, welcome. Today I want to discuss emotional eating. And kind of learning the signs and finding ways that you can maybe deal with that emotional eating. So yesterday, my grandmother was here for 2 weeks, and she left yesterday, and it was snowing, and it was not really great weather, and it was very dark, and I found myself emotional eating, and I've slipped into bad habits every once in a while, into old habits, and I catch myself, and then I kind of rephrase the situation and making it a learning experience. And so yesterday, that was emotional eating. So I was really just down about my grandmother leaving. I suffer from seasonal depression as well. So it was just really tough for me. It was a tough day. And there were a lot of temptations around that I let get to me. And honestly, if I would have been even, 4 or 5 months ago, if I would have been in a situation, I really would have gotten down on myself. I really would have let it ruin not just the whole day, but even like my whole week. I would have let it kind of carry over, and so I looked as yesterday as recognizing that I was doing it, being able to stop when I recognized that I was doing it and rephrase and look at it as a learning experience, and then think of ways that if this happens again in the future, that I can deal with it without turning to food. So whether that's a little bit of self-care, whether that's listening to a podcast, having maybe a cup of tea or coffee with maybe some like stevia, a splash of almond milk or coconut milk, to really help. Sorry, this truck just splashed a huge thing of water on me. To really help with dealing with that, but without going to food as your as your backup or as something of comfort. And so when the weather is really cold, I was thinking, what would have been a better choice was, making a hot cup of tea with a little bit of stevia, and later on in the evening, once I had recognized this and I kind of stopped myself, and realized it and made the association, I did have that tea later on, and it really did help with curbing those sweet cravings, because I did have some sweets yesterday, and those tend to make me crave more sweets. And instead of having more sweets later on in the evening after dinner, I just had tea. Then I had my reishi mushroom hot cocoa, and then I went to bed. I didn't really eat much for dinner. I wasn't really hungry because I had been eating all day. But it's really important to recognize those things and not to get down on yourself because you're doing it, because I think everybody has these moments of I don't want to call it weakness, but you have these moments where you catch yourself slipping into bad habits, or just an old mindset, and it really just takes refocusing, and over time it's going to get better and better. So like I said before, if I had been in this situation, I probably would have gone on like a week binge, and I would have been really anxious and guilty and felt really bad, and kind of got it down on myself and thought, why am I doing this? And potentially hurting myself in the long run with the results that I want. I need to make reminders of for myself of why I'm doing this, what results I'm looking for, whether that has to do with a number on the scale, or my relationship with food, or showing my girls that You can have a healthy relationship with food and your body at the same time, and be happy and healthy in life, and really focus on that positive mindset, things like that. So those are good reminders and good triggers for me. When something like that happens, in the future, I'll plan better. The other thing that I think is really going to help me is meal planning and meal prepping. I am going to be 100% honest. I hate meal planning and meal prepping. I tend to eat like the same things pretty much on a daily basis, varying sometimes here and there. But I always find that if I meal prep for like a week, things, I tend to get tired of it. Things go bad. So instead of doing what I've done in the past where I've meal planned for a week, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start meal planning for 3 days at a time. And I'm going to start meal planning things that I can use in like various dishes. So maybe I'm going to make some hard-boiled eggs that I can have as like a grab-and-go snack or a grab-and-go meal with, FFC and some snackable veggies, and some quinoa that I can do, with a salad or in like a taco bowl, or as a side to maybe some veggies and some proteins. So I think it's really important to make that conscious admission to yourself and say, I really don't like meal planning. It's really not my thing, but I think it's going to help me. So it's something that I need to do despite not liking it. It's like doing the dishes. You have to do the dishes. Otherwise you're not going to have any dishes. And it's a necessary evil, really. And I don't really, like I said, like to meal plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it really, really simple, really uncomplicated. If I end up, eating out one day, I'm not going to get down on myself. And the other thing that I'm realizing too, and I've said this before, is that my body personally needs one day where the carbs are a little bit heavier. So I'm going to play around with my food and my tracker and see which days that is when I'm working out, because when you're moving more, you do need more calories. So you still need to be in a calorie deficit, but you definitely need more calories, whether that comes from veggies or whatnot. So on the days where I am working out at home and then going to the gym, and sometimes I'm running, sometimes I'm biking, doing things that I can't do at home, I don't have the equipment for. Maybe if I'm noticing that I'm feeling a little bit fatigued, especially if I'm going on early in the afternoon, I will add a few more FFCs to my routine and kind of see what that does, and if that affects the scale one way or the other, and then I can kind of track and see, okay, this many works for me. That maybe it's just a small amount of FFCs, just bumping it up by 5 or 10 grams of carbs. I don't track my macros because I am following the 2B Mindset. But actually going through the 2B Mindset certification and training is what really helped me identify that I was emotional eating yesterday. And so the other thing that I can do is, she has all these videos laid out and that addresses emotional eating, eating out, events, things like that. And I can definitely, next time I'm having one of those moments, go watch the emotional eating video, and really identify to myself, do I need this eating opportunity? Am I really truly hungry, or is this something, emotionally that I can use? Maybe I can exercise or listen to a podcast or have a hot tea, something that in the end is going to make me feel good and feel better emotionally, but it isn't going to negatively affect the results that I want. And I know everybody deals with it differently, and it's I think it was a combination yesterday of the emotional eating and sense hunger as well. Sense hunger I'm really sensitive to. Like if something is in my house and I see it or I smell it, my willpower kind of, dwindles down. With my husband being a pastry chef, it is really a true test of willpower, honestly. Most days I'm pretty good, but when sense hunger or emotional hunger comes along, even sleep deprivation hunger, I tend to, be low in willpower. So those are things that when I do experience this in the future, I can really correlate and say, okay, these are things that I can try and see what works best for me, see what yields the best results, and also tracking it. So yesterday, instead of just writing off the whole day like I would have in the past and not tracking anything or stop to, being very vague, I was actually very detailed with my tracking, and I'll actually share my tracker on social media so people can see kind of what I'm talking about. On normal days, I don't measure anything, so I usually eyeball things, and I track accordingly. So yesterday I was definitely very detailed in my tracking, and what I am going to do the next time I have a situation like this is actually track the emotion as well. And so tracking is going to help, and also being conscious that you are going to write down everything can make you a little bit more aware of not so much guilt, but just being more aware of the fact that I'm going to write this down, and when I see it, I'm going to think, did I really need all of these things? Yesterday it was like my grandmother had left this Chicago style popcorn that she had gotten at the airport that it's like just reminds me of home. It's like a sense hunger thing, and an emotional thing where it reminds me of home. My grandma just left. She left the popcorn. She also left some of these like sourdough cheese bite things, and I had those as well. So it was a lot to do with emotional hunger, but it was also seeing it, because when I usually don't buy things like that because I know, even if it's for my husband or my daughter, I know that I will eat it if it's in my house. And so I put those last night, I put those out of sight. I'm kind of out of sight, out of mind thing. And next time I have those feelings, because I do know they're there, I can just give myself these other options of, do I really need this eating opportunity? Am I eating because I'm truly hungry, or am I eating because I see it? Am I eating because my, emotions are going? Or am I really truly hungry? Is my stomach growling? And then in that case, drinking water first, and then reaching for healthier options and veggies and fiber-filled carbs and proteins. So those are things that if you're an emotional eater, it's really good. If you know you're an emotional eater, which is even better because you are aware of it, you can do these things. So maybe when you get emotional, you do something that you enjoy, taking a bath, maybe reading your favorite book, listening to your favorite podcast, listening to a podcast that is very uplifting and that is going to make you feel good when you do it. And I mentioned tea, and so you could get like a fruity tea, or like whatever kind of tea would be like a comforting thing for you, and have that, and just associate that with feeling good, being satisfied. So those are things that you can keep in mind. It obviously isn't going to totally mute those emotions, but it can really help, because I find when I'm emotional eating and I eat things that aren't like the greatest, like simple sugars and unnecessary silly carbohydrates, that my emotions are negatively affected. So those are things that I can correlate together next time as well, and say, okay, do I really need this eating opportunity? And how is this food going to make me feel after I'm done? Maybe during the time you feel gratified, but afterwards, you're gonna feel like, oh man, I'm emotionally eating again, I'm slipping back into old habits, it can negatively affect your mindset. So try to always go for that positive option. Obviously, you're gonna have times where you're not really thinking about it in the moment, and then you think about it afterwards. You're like, oh man, I was emotionally eating again, and it can teach you to recognize those moments. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If I didn't say hi, if you're catching this live, I'm so sorry. I was driving, and I don't like to look at my phone screen unless I'm stopped at a stop sign or a stoplight, because I am hands-free, and I want to be safe. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this live, if you didn't catch the live, you're either watching this on a podcast or YouTube video. And if you haven't checked out my podcast or YouTube channel, you should definitely do that. Fat to Fit Revolution, or you can just search my name, Morgan Hoyle. I'm on Apple Podcasts, all of the really main podcast platforms, and on YouTube as well. So thank you guys so much for joining, and I will see you guys next time. So much for tuning in today and sharing this time with me. Please stay tuned for future episodes and check out my podcast.